And we are live. We're here.
Yay!
We are here for an all new October Pet Spooktacular. Thank you guys for joining another edition of the Missy Show. We are still your premier source for fun and informative pet topics. And it is Saturday, October 6th. And you are here to learn about kind of very creepy, but I learned a lot, especially with my research on like vampires and Vlad the Impaler, and some of it was pretty gruesome, but interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, they all kind of tie into some stuff. You're like, okay, well, I understand why it's kind of like around Halloween and all of this stuff, because it's pretty scary, to say the least. A little, yeah, gruesome would be a good word terminology for it with the werewolves. But
Yeah, the title tonight, for those of you who are just joining us, it's the Transylvania Connection, Werewolves, Vlad, and other creepy Transylvania tales. So um just starting, I'd always, kind of found the novel Dracula, kind of fascinating. I've only read bits and pieces of it. I've never read the whole thing, but mainly it was the movies. And I don't know, Dee, if you've seen the 1992 movie Dracula that had Keanu Reeves in it and Winona Ryder. That's my favorite adaptation of it. I really love that with
I,
Gary Oldman. He's playing Dracula.
yes, I did because Keanu Reeves was trying to save Winona Ryder, right?
Yes,
Or
because
something to that effect, or something
yes,
like that.
she is actually his fiance in the movie. But they later went
Yeah.
to get married because he's playing Jonathan Harker, from the novel,
Okay.
and he's Mina, his Mina, and Mina is also the love interest of Dracula, at least in the movie anyway. I've never like totally read the novel to compare bit by bit, but I've always been a little bit fascinated by the story, and I used to wonder, did Bram Stoker, like where did he come up with this idea? Did he, did vampires kind of come from that novel? But based on my research, of course, the vampire legend that pre-existed this novel by like centuries. So a
Mm.
lot of different cultures have had their different interpretation of like vampiric type beings. So no, Bram Stoker didn't invent that when he came up with the novel. Um, Actually, this is something, and I researched several different sites, but Wikipedia kind of sums it up a little bit better. But basically, and of course, if you've been living on this planet and haven't been under a rock, you should know what a vampire is, but this is their take on it. They say a vampire is a being from folklore that subsists by feeding on the vital force, generally in the form of blood, of the living. In European folklore, vampires were undead beings that often visited loved ones and caused mischief or deaths in the neighborhood they inhabited when they were alive. They wore shrouds and were often described as bloated and of ruddy or dark countenance, markedly different from today's gaunt, pale vampire, which dates from the early 19th century. And they say that these entities have been recorded in most cultures, and the term vampire was popularized in Western Europe after reports of an 18th century mass hysteria of a pre existing folk belief in the Balkans and Eastern Europe that in some cases resulted in corpses being staked and people being accused of vampirism. So
Mm.
actually, some people were kind of freaking out, and they went through this phase where they were kind of, going around and, reopening caskets and digging people up and staking them and doing things to keep them from raising from the dead. So yeah.
See, yeah, see, they had like all of these different, like the werewolf came in, and there were like all these different kind of variations of how the werewolf came in and everything. So I can understand how Dracula. I always wondered about Dracula. Dracula was my like was the one thing because I don't know if you remember seeing the movie. I can't think of his name, but they made it. It's not like it was a comedy or anything, but they kind of made it into like it was a comedy, and I can't think of how I can see his face clear as day, but he was like Dracula, but it was a comedy kind of a thing where he was
Are you talking about that movie from like the kind of late 70s?
Yes.
I know who you're talking about because
I can't
it's
think of
the
his name.
actor. He's always known for kind of like being tan. I know they would always.
Yeah,
I can't
yes.
remember his name.
Hamilton.
Hamilton, George Hamilton.
George Hamilton was
Yes,
the guy.
I
I
love
just
that movie. I know what you're talking about because I was listening to the song. It's this song that they play where they're at the disco, and I can't. Where the ladies like, I love the nightlife. I like the
yes.
boogie. Yeah, I was listening to that not that long ago.
I always remember seeing that when I was little, and I just thought this is a funny because I used to usually when you see like those movies, you get scared and you're like, okay, I don't want to watch this or whatever. But that one, I was like, this was kind of funny. This was not scaring me. I was little. I was like, it's kind of funny. I'm not scared or whatever. So I don't know, but that just what when you were talking about Dracula and that movie with Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, I was thinking, yeah, and I remember another one that I wasn't scared about.
Yeah, that's what's so crazy because there are so many different takes on vampires. And of course the original movie was like that really freaky looking character. I think the movie was called Nosferatu, but it's like in
Yeah,
the 1920s and he looks really creepy with the long nails and I forget the actor who portrayed him in that, but you've and then of course you had the Bela Lugosi roles and the Lon Chaney and that kind of thing as it progressed. So you've got different versions of it, but actually even Bram Stoker wasn't the first person to like write a novel about vampires. There was a story in 1819 called the Vampire by John Polidori, and then there was another story called Carmilla, which was in 1872. And actually, Bram Stoker's novel didn't come out till 1897. But none of these authors invented, the legend about vampires. They were around for a really long time, and it's so much out there about that. You guys, I could like give you the links and stuff, but they were even saying like cultures such as the Mesopotamians, Hebrews, ancient Greeks, Romans, they all had their tales of like vampire like creatures and things. And, there are different, things that you can do to protect yourself and ward yourself from vampires. They were saying, now this is really interesting. They have some theories onto as to what makes people become vampires. The causes of vampiric generation were many and varied in original folklore. In Slavic and Chinese traditions, any corpse that was jumped over by an animal, particularly a dog or cat, was feared to become one of the undead. Another thing, a body with a wound that had not been treated with boiling water was also at risk. In Russian folklore, vampires were said to have once been witches or people who had rebelled against the Russian Orthodox Church while they were alive. Let's see. Cultural practices often arose that were intended to prevent a recently deceased loved one from turning into an undead revenant. Burying a corpse upside down was widespread, as was placing earthly objects such as scythes and sickles near the grave to satisfy any demons entering the body or to appease the dead so that it would not wish to arise from its coffin. This method resembles the ancient Greek practice of placing an opulus in the corpse's mouth to pay the toll to cross the river Styx in the underworld. It has been argued that instead the coin was intended to ward off any evil spirits from entering the body, and this may have influenced later vampire folklore. So they've got a lot of different ways that you can keep your loved one from becoming a vampire, but definitely, I don't think too many people in today's age are keeping their family's corpse at the house or having like home funerals, although that is making a comeback, but that's another story. But you don't want a dog or cat to jump over the corpse because that could potentially create a vampire.
See, and those all those little things about how you hear about these little things nowadays. Don't do that because you're blah blah blah. Don't, and you often wonder, well, why? It has come all the way from long, long, long ago.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to do certain things. That's so crazy. That's so crazy. The werewolf. I mean, I don't know if we want to get off on that, but the werewolf, because you were saying some stuff about that, how they believe like they have him tied into like serial killers and things of that nature. And I was like, what in the world? Because I never even thought about when I thought about the werewolf. I don't know, I just thought about, I remember just seeing this movie as a kid, and I don't remember. I don't in this, and you probably knew about this one too, Jay. It was this guy, and but this was a like freaky one. It was this guy, and I can't even remember. I just remember him turning, and his turning was it looked so painful.
I bet
Um,
you're talking about an American Werewolf in London,
and
probably.
it probably was him. I guarantee you it was because everything would like grow
Hmm.
long and it
Hmm.
would bust through his fingers, and I was like, oh, that looks so painful. It looks so painful. But and I don't know if you're ready to switch over to the werewolf part or whatever. We can flip
Oh
flop
yeah,
and go
go
back,
ahead, go
whatever.
ahead.
But with the werewolves, they were saying that, a werewolf is a mythological animal, and he's like the subject of many stories throughout the world. So he has like different origins, I guess, just like Dracula did. But according to this article that I read from the History Channel, werewolves are, according to some legends, people who morph into vicious, powerful wolves, and others are mutant combinations of a human and a wolf. But they all say they are bloodthirsty beasts who cannot control their lust for killing people and animals.
Mm.
So the early werewolves, they say it's not clear as to where they originated, but some scholars believe that the werewolf made its debut in the Epic of Gilgamesh. And I think I remember. Do you remember that? Do you
I
remember
remember,
that from
yeah, I
school?
remember in college studying
Yeah.
Gilgamesh. Yep, I do.
Yeah, the oldest Western prose. And when Gilgamesh jilted a potential lover because she had turned her previous mate, Gilgamesh jilted a potential lover because she had turned her previous mate into a wolf. They also said that werewolves made another early appearance, and you were saying about Dracula and Vlad made his appearance in Greek mythology with the legend of, and I don't know if I'm going to say his name right or their name right or whoever this is, named right. Is it Laocoon? Do you remember hearing that name? Laocoon or something like
Seems like
that?
it. Yeah, yeah.
According to the legend of Lycaon, the sons of Pelagus, I could be saying this so wrong, angered the god of Zeus when he served him real meat from the remains of a sacrificed boy. That just got made me sick. Anyway, as a punishment, the enraged Zeus turned Lycaon and his sons into wolves. Also, werewolves emerged in the early Nordic folklore. The saga of the Volsungs tells the story of a father and a son who discovered wolf pellets that had the power to turn people into wolves for 10 days. The father son duo donned the pellets, transformed into wolves, and went on a killing rampage in the forest. Their rampage ended when the father attacked the son, causing a lethal wound. The son only survived because a kind raven gave the father a leaf with healing powers. So they have so many different folklore or legends as to how werewolves came to be. But one of them that got me was the werewolves that were serial killers, or how they came to be as serial killers. So many so-called werewolves were from the century ago were in fact, they believe that they were in fact serial killers. And they believe this main part started in France. In 1521, a Frenchman named Pierre Bourgot and Michel Verdun allegedly swore allegiance to the devil and claimed to have an ointment that turned them into wolves. After confessing to brutally murdering several children, they were both burned to death at the stake. And burning was thought to be one way that you could kill a werewolf. Let's see. Also, Giles Garnet, also known as the Werewolf of Dole, was another 16th century Frenchman whose claim to fame was also as an ointment with a werewolfing morphing ability. According to the legend, as a wolf, he viciously killed children and ate them. He too was burned at the stake for his monstrous crimes. And then another one, his name was, oh God, I'm going to screw this up. Burgot Burden of Garnier or whatever, something to that effect, were mentally ill and acted under the influence of hallucinogenic substances, or simply they were cold-blooded killers. It's how they came to be was up for debate as to why they were doing what they were doing. Some of the people believe that they were under some kind of like drug or something, but other people just believe they were just going around killing people for the fact that they could just go around and kill people. So
Wow.
there's so many different ways that the people looked at how werewolves came to be. Some of them believe that they started out as werewolves. Some believe that they were put on by spells or different things like that. So werewolves had they have a different kind of, they came to be. They have different stories of how they came to be. There's no one set folklore as to how a werewolf
it's
came
kind
to
of
be.
hard to trace the origins, and the werewolf stuff that I'm most familiar with, but I guess that comes from the movies and stuff, because you hear about like the only way to kill them is with a silver bullet.
Yeah, and
And that a lot of times they only transform during a full moon. You know, you see that
exactly.
during, like, if it wasn't a full moon, they were okay. But if the moon was full, it's like it was something they couldn't control. But then, like you were saying, Dee, there are those stories where it's like they are in control of it and they can transform when they want to. But I think most popular, you know, culture from the movies now just says it's like full moon and
Well,
kill
yeah,
them with a silver bullet.
yeah, they have them. They believe like they were shapeshifters. You know, that's one of the things of, and that's where the whole, you know, full moon part comes in. When there's a full moon, you know, they change their shape, or they shift their shape, or however you want to put it. So that was one of the beliefs, that a werewolf is just a shapeshifter.
And also too, when you brought up the thing about serial killers, and it made me sort of think about, like, you know how they say like during a full moon, you know, people kind of act more crazy, and you know,
Yeah,
even the word lunatic and lunacy comes from lunar, you know,
yeah,
meaning moon. So when people, you know, kind of freaking out, or they're kind of crazy or something, you know, that's associated with the full moon.
exactly. So it's I don't know. It's because I always want to say it had to start somewhere. You know, all these different like legends and different things. There had to be something. I always believe there's like some, even if it's not like as extreme as people, because
Right.
you know how people will take some one little thing, and then by the time it has gone through the ages, it becomes this thing that people believe is true, and it has grown into this big story, folklore. So I always say there was one like tidbit of truth to this, and I often wonder what was that like piece of truth that started the whole thing.
Exactly. That's the same thing I was thinking, like with the vampires. Another thing I was going to say, this, and I need to mention this regarding like Vlad the Impaler. I don't know if you, I know you've probably heard of that before, Dee, but I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
everyone heard of that. But even though Bram Stoker did not come up with the concept of vampires on his own, they believe that he did come up with the name for his main character, which was Count Dracula. He got that from Vlad the Impaler, because, and Vlad was actually Vlad the Third, and his father was Vlad the Second, who was a member of the Order of the Dragon.
Mm.
And that comes from, I think in Romanian or whatever, I think he was the Order of Dracul, Dracul, and Dracul translates to dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Because and that's where sort of where Dracula comes from, you know.
Okay.
So Vlad basically, he was in control. He was, how do I want to say it? He was a ruler over his empire, I think like 3 separate times, because you know back in those days it's like they would have it for a while, then they'd get overthrown, then they'd be in exile, then they'd be in imprisonment, blah blah blah. But one of this particular guy's favorite ways to kill people was to impale them.
Okay.
So that's how he got his nickname, Vlad the Impaler. So one of his favorite ways to sort of kick fear into the hearts of everybody and just sort of let everyone know, hey, don't mess with me. He would frequently impale his victims, and he allegedly just had like tens of thousands of victims just, you know, impaled on these poles and sticks. So anybody trying to come up on his kingdom or whatever would take one look at all of this, and they would kind of just run around in fear and go away. But he was a real person, and likely Bram Stoker, I think they say he had a friend who was a historian of Transylvanian history or something like that, and he became fascinated with this Vlad the Impaler person. And also Vlad was born in Transylvania, so that's also the Transylvanian connection. And also Dracul, or the Dracula, also another meaning for that is devil. So
Mm.
he was known as son of Dracul because his father was a member of this dragon thing, member of the dragon cult or whatever. But that also meant son of the devil. So that could have
Okay.
also been a thing that motivated Bram Stoker to want to name his character, after that. That's where Dracula comes from, a variant of Dracul.
See, and there's your tidbit. There's your your little, kind of, I don't know if it's the tidbit that started the whole Dracula thing, but there's your little thing of just going in Bram Stoker's thing. It's where he got his from or whatever,
Exactly.
Yeah, so because when I was looking at the werewolves, I was like, well, what is it that, connects it to? Because it might, like I say, it has to be some little thing of truth that would say, okay, let's take this, but then we can run with it. And so I came across something that talked about the medical explanation of what's called the werewolf phenomenon. And it was like a real person that had this medical kind of a condition. I don't know if you've ever heard of Peter the Wild Boy. Okay. In 1725, a boy was found wandering naked on all fours throughout a German forest, and many thought he was a werewolf or at least raised by wolves. Peter ate with his hands and couldn't speak, and he was eventually adopted by courts of King I and King George II, and lived out his days as their pet in England, which I thought,
oh, wow.
Are they really talking about he lived out his days as their pet, or did they? And I'm like, okay, I'm not even going to get into that. But anyway, research has shown that Peter likely had what's called Pitt-Hopkins syndrome, and it's a condition discovered in 1978 and this was discovered in 1978. So it caused a lack of speech, seizures, distinct facial features, and difficulty breathing and intellectual challenges. So I'm like, okay, this was discovered in 1978, but you had to know this condition probably existed way, years and years and years and years ago. But of course, the medical research and stuff like that was not available. It was not even known about. And most of the times when you had some type of illness that we now know, we've probably researched and called it a syndrome of some type. Back then, they just probably thought you were possessed. So let's kill them. Yes. They're a witch. They're a wolf. They're, Dracula, what have you. So that's kind of probably a tidbit of where that all kind of evolved from. And then you get up into present day and you're like, okay, this has an explanation because maybe this person did exhibit what we come to know as werewolf kind of tendencies, maybe not to the extent of, shape-shifting and changing and things like that. But they also have that, what's that condition where you have hair that grows all over your body?
Yes, because there are, I saw pictures of I forgot what they would call him, Dog Boy or something like that, a member of the circus or something like that back in the day. But yeah, you grow excessive hair and you can't control it or whatever, and it's all over your face and everywhere. Exactly. I know what you're talking about.
Exactly. So if you have that and then add it on to something like this, there you go. You got your modern day werewolf, So, I mean, I can understand why he could have come from a distinct medical condition that people just were not aware of and didn't know how to even, this person, because back in the I don't want to say the olden days, but back in early days, any type of abnormal thing that was out of normal health thing, people kind of said, okay, you must be possessed, you must be, whatever, the devil must have you or something like that. So they thought their only course of action was to either run you out of town with burning stakes or to burn you on one or something to that effect, or impale you, I guess. So
yeah, and impalement, that's another whole thing in and of itself, because that was a really bad way to die. And you would think it would be instant, but they even had ways where you could kind of hang in there for days.
Oh my God. That is
really, really, really bad. And so yeah, and so now, mainly because of the novel Dracula, Transylvania has sort of gotten this reputation of being this really creepy whatever kind of place. And I think in some ways they've embraced it, because I think they even have a castle there that's kind of known as Dracula's castle or something like that. And it's where Vlad was or whatever. But I've read that Vlad the Impaler never actually even lived at that particular castle. I think it may be called Bran Castle or something like that. But I think it's a big tourist attraction there. So I think in some ways they embrace it. But I know even when I hear the name Transylvania or think about anything with the Balkans and those areas over there, like Romania and all that, I guess just from, you know, seeing all these movies and, you know, reading the books and hearing the different stuff, you think about it as being this scary place. But I've also heard it's really beautiful there. Never been there. I'm sure it is a very beautiful place, but it's just come to be synonymous with like Dracula and vampires and, you know, otherworldly things of that nature.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, I bet you it's beautiful. Wouldn't you love to go over there and like take tours and get the history of it and I would love to be able to do that.
And they
Probably in
even
the
like
daytime, but
yeah,
not at
that's what I
night.
was gonna say, in the daytime, and I would want to stay in whatever is the most modern parts there. And you know, I've never been there. I don't know how much. I'm sure it is modern, but I would not want to stay in a wooded, deserted area. I'll just put it like that. I want to be in the middle of the city.
So if they offered you this one time chance to spend a night in a castle and be able to experience it in real time, you wouldn't want to be a part of that, Jay?
Here's the thing, Dee. You know what? And they may do that at that particular castle. I know they do tours and all that, I believe, and I don't know if they have it where you can actually stay there. If I was going to do that, I would have to be in a large group. It would have to be me, you, some of our friends. You know, we have to have a big group, and I would not be in a room alone. I would put it. If I was going to do it, needs to be in a large group, not just me and you.
Yeah, no, we gotta have some reinforcements.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We know each other. We
Yes.
know we
And
might
preferably some other people on the tour with us who are also staying there too. Not just us and our friends, but other people are doing it too.
Yeah,
I'd rather be that way if I was going to do that.
Yeah.
But that might be something to research.
I know, right? Maybe we need to take a trip.
Yeah, that would have to probably be one where I'll win tickets or something.
I know.
No offense, I'm sure the Transylvanian people are very lovely.
It's probably wonderful.
There. I'm sure they're very awesome. And if we have any Transylvanian Missy Show fans, we appreciate your support. Thank you for listening and all that good stuff. But you know, there are other, as we've discovered, there are other Transylvania legends besides Dracula.
Yeah.
There are some other ones that, you know, now this one is a very common one. Let me not say common, but it's a pretty popular one that probably most people have heard of. Mostly everyone has heard about the Pied Piper. But I had no idea that it had Transylvanian roots or, you know, in that area over there. But okay, the legend of the Pied Piper is one of the best known in the world, especially thanks to the series Silicon Valley. Now, I don't know about it from there. I think I heard it just like in, you know, like the Grimm stories or something like that, you know, whatever fairy. It's pretty gruesome and was probably created to scar children for life instead of preparing them for sweet dreams. In the story, the inhabitants of Hamlin find themselves unable to cope with a rat infestation, a problem which is solved by a mysterious piper in exchange for money. He gets rid of all the rats except for one with his magical tune, and as a result, the people refuse to pay him. Angered, the piper plays a different tune, which brainwashes all the children in Hamlin into following him. Some legends say that they all drowned or jumped off a cliff, while others simply don't tell what happened to the children. One of the versions, however, proves to be more optimistic. According to it, the children emerged from the Vegas cave in Transylvania and settled there. As strange as it may seem, this version is closest to the most widely accepted interpretation of the legend. Many people from Hamlin actually settled in Transylvania at the time of the story, leaving the German lands forever. The descendants of the settlers still live in small communities in Transylvania. Didn't know that.
Wow. And you know what? You know what I heard about? I saw this like, I love comedy routines or whatever. And somebody was actually saying, you know, they were talking about how kind of savage our childhood, like little stories and little rhymes are. And they were like, okay, take the Pied Piper, for instance. This is a man that comes to your town and plays lovely music that entrances your kids and takes them away. But we're saying, oh, the Pied Piper, he's a nice little man. And I was like, you know what? That is kind of like morbid, like kind of creepy. It's just like,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because there are darker versions of that because I've read other stuff besides just that right there. So yeah, there are darker versions of it with a lot of the Grimm fairy tales, we kind of got the watered down version, but when you read what they really wrote, a lot of those things were much darker.
I know, right? I mean, what is it? The one where the when the bow breaks, the cradle will fall. That
Hmm.
one, you're like, you're killing the child. You're killing the baby.
Yeah.
You're killing the baby. Well, I mean, I have also come across more. Uh, I never thought about it, but I mean, I guess in the way we think of marriage, when you say your marriage vows, one of the lines in the marriage vows is "till death do us part." And you think
Mhm.
about, "till death do us part" as okay, one of us might die and then we'll part, and that's the only way we'll be apart. Well, came across this one little legend, and it is called the extreme marriage counseling through imprisonment. And so,
Mm.
yeah, this is a legend that is told again and again in the area around Sibabu, which I know I've just butchered that name. And it's hard to track down his exact origins, but in the past, couples looking to separate were locked in the prison tower in Sibabu for 2 weeks. During this time, they had to sleep in the same bed and eat together, which apparently resulted in a meaningful conversations, given that there were no smartphones at the time, of course. And as a result, it is said that only one couple actually went on with the divorce after spending 2 weeks locked up together. But as sweet as the story may sound, there's always a dark twist that kills the magic. And this twist can be found in the legend of the Fortress Church in Casindoneria. So mess that up. And it's a small town close to Sibubu. In this case, the couples went through the same marriage counseling as fellow citizens in Sibubu. The difference is that they were never to be released unless they made up. So
Uh,
apparently, the people in Casadoria took the phrase "till death do us part" very seriously because unless you made up and it was legitimately a makeup, you weren't getting out of that castle. You were going to stay there forever until one of you died, and then you wanted, I guess, you could get out. So yeah,
oh,
I think we'll just work it out. We'll just work it
yeah,
out on
that's
our
what I was
own.
gonna say. Or at least we better act like we're gonna work
I
it out.
know. Oh, I love him so
Then
much.
part ways, and you have to leave that town.
I know, right? Be gone.
Oh
I
my
just thought that
God.
was well. And now when I listen to Death Do Us Part, I'm like, yeah, because you might be in a castle somewhere trying to get away from this person. That's the
Yeah.
only way you're gonna be able to do it.
And just imagine, Dee, because 50% of marriages end in divorce. Think about how many people will be locked up in a
I
council
know.
somewhere. It's like either
You'd
you
be
make
running
up
out.
or you're not
You'd be
getting
running out of castles. You wouldn't
out.
even have castles here. You'd be like, okay, we're gonna put you in a box. You're not gonna be in this box. Yeah, no, I don't think that would work now. I don't think that would work. I think death would part some people because somebody would probably kill the other person.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, they'd probably kill them.
Yeah, that's kind of how that's kind of how they would get away from one another.
Well, let's see. I'm just gonna read one more. This one is Abrud Castle's Weeping Bride. The Abrud fortification in northern Transylvania was built in the 16th century and is currently being renovated so that tourists can enjoy its history. According to local legend, they could get much more than they bargained for. It seems that the lord of the fortress, Francis Rakoczy, was successfully keeping an invading army at bay. In order to defeat him, the invader sent a handsome officer to charm his daughter, who became so enamored that she revealed the existence of a secret tunnel. Her father managed to escape, but not before cursing her for eternity. However, he was nice enough to allow redemption via kissing, as in any good story. So the princess would be released if one brave man were to kiss her in her three ghostly forms: a snake, a frog, and a weeping bride, who would appear in front of him. As far as we know, the princess is still working on her bridal dress.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yep, that one wasn't happy. So
That's so
hopefully that's
sad.
just a little legend.
Can't you just see like looking through a door? Okay, I'm getting real morbid. But can't you just see like looking through a door in the window and you see this poor lady sitting in the corner rocking in a chair, like knitting or sewing her wedding dress.
Yeah, and
That's
just to
so
think,
sad.
so what are the odds of her getting out of it? Because the man has to kiss her in 3 different forms. Who's going to
I
kiss her naked a
know.
frog? Even if he would kiss a weeping bride, who's going to kiss? Yeah,
I know. That's sad.
yeah.
Well, I'm gonna do one more quickly.
Okay.
And this is one I want because this one just kind of freaks me out anyway. I'm not gonna be going on any lakes anytime soon. But the lake that requires human sacrifices. Okay, so sometimes the water is alive, and when it is, it asks for dead man's head. This is what the elders of the villagers in Mamor's region believe. They are very sure that the lakes in the area sometimes require human sacrifices. There are several mountain lakes with dark legends, each of which is called an Izer, I-E-Z-E-R. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. One of the most famous story refers to a sunken church. A long time ago, a flood covered a church and a few homes. The people in the village of Tissia claim that they sometimes hear the bells of the church at night during Easter. And then another darker legend is that of the bottomless lakes which swallow people without, another dark legend that is the bottomless lakes which swallow people without ever returning them. One lake is said to have swallowed all the guests of a wedding after they tried to cross it during one winter. Another lake, Vinderal, supposedly had a hidden vortex able to drown even the most skilled swimmers. Young girls used to bathe in it as the ritual was said to help them get married within a year. The practice ended, however, when one of the girls was pulled under the water in spite of the fact that she was tied to the shore with a rope. Finally, other legends talk about bloody pieces of flesh sometimes being seen at the surface of the water. Ew. And then you know what it kind of makes me think of? Not saying that this is what it is, but it just kind of makes me think of like riptides and whirlpools you see in water. Because I was like, well, okay, how could this be tied to something? And I was like, okay, maybe back then there were riptides, or maybe there was whirlpools. I don't know if they happen in lakes or anything like that, but I don't know. It's just creepy. But I don't.
It's because probably, like we were saying, everything that you hear of, it had some origin. Like even vampires themselves, we get where Bram Stoker, like you were saying, got the Dracula thing from the Vlad the Impaler, but vampires themselves, that kind of thing has existed for centuries. You know, the legend of that. So, like, where did that start? Just like with werewolves, what is that really based on?
Exactly. So it's like, okay.
Well, I think I'm thoroughly creeped out. So I think we got off to a strong beginning, but we have 3 more to get through before this month is over. But I think next week's might not be as bad. It just depends on which movies we discuss. Next Saturday night, same place, same time, we will be discussing the creatures of Hollyweird, monsters in the movies. So, depending on which movies we pick. Some may not be as scary, but I've thought about some monsters that kind of freaked me out, at least as a kid. I think there were a lot of them from those days. So we'll be discussing some of the monsters from the movies that kind of freaked us out.
Yeah, that's gonna be good. I know one out. Well, I don't know. Well, yeah, he's a monster anyway. Okay. Anyway.
So yes, Dee. So you need to be think about some of your favorite scary movies and what were some monsters that freak you out.
Well, I'm gonna call him a monster. I don't know if people would consider him one, but he scared the crap out of me.
Wonder who that could be. And I know what my mom would say. She used to always talk about the Gill Man. She would always talk about the Gill Man because back and I'm going to save this really for the next week's show, but she would talk about, they used to have this show that would come on called The Big Show when they were coming up, and they would have all these cool, like, scary movies and monsters and stuff from back in their day. But okay, we'll save all that. But
yes, we have to sleep tonight.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we got to get all this vampire and impalement and werewolf stuff off our brains. So I think
I need to go watch an episode of the Flintstones or something.
Yeah, there you go. I already got my Netflix up now because I think I'm gonna try to watch something funny. But we want to thank you guys for joining us, and thank you for coming back and joining us for October Pet Spooktacular.
Yay! Glad to be here as always.
And also, we will be having some blog posts that are October Pet Spooktacular themed. And we hope you'll join us. I think my next one is going to be Friday, and I'll be discussing H.P. Lovecraft and the Cthulhu mythos. So that will be my Friday blog post. So stay tuned for that. And we will be here next Saturday at 8 p.m. If there does have to be a slight schedule change, because I also forgot that it's my niece's birthday. So I don't know if we're doing a sleepover, but I think tentatively for right now, we are still on for 8 p.m. or because it may be next Saturdays that has to get pushed to Sunday. One of them we may have to push to Sunday, but I will let you guys know.
And hopefully we won't have any kind of tropical depression coming into the thing.
Yeah, that's right. My mom was talking about that. Yeah, we are in that area. We are, because I remember, I think last October we had to cancel a show because of something like that. We
have another one.
Oh joy, oh joy. Well, you guys, if there are any changes, as always, we will keep you posted, but rest assured we will come at you with our other ones. And after the Creatures of Hollyweird, the next week is Creatures of the Night, Hags, Shadow Beings, and Greys. And our last one is Want to Hear a Story? Terrifying Alleged Real Monster Stories. So that will be our last one, signing us out. So that may be another really scary one. But once again, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Dee, for joining us. And we will see you guys next weekend. Bye.